on a screen porch and drink lemonade. And the kids would play in the side yard. And there I was, probably 3. And I was told that I was a real brat, as I said. And when my aunt would say, come sit on my lap, Doris, I'd say, what'll you give me?
At 3?
At 3.
At 3. Go.
My mother cured me of some of that.
You mean you still have some of that left?
Uh-oh. So let's see. And so I grew up there. And I went to elementary school. As a quick aside, it turns out that my husband, whose family came from Birmingham, worked their ways down to New York. Was a separate ladies' school connected to Tulane University across the street. And I enjoyed the art school, studied painting, etc. And my mother, being a very practical lady, said, I think you should have a minor in something practical. So I studied interior design as a minor. And that's actually where I met my husband. He had started Tulane earlier than I, and when had finished, just about finished his freshman year when Pearl Harbor occurred. So he left school, joined the Navy, and spent the war in the Pacific. After the war, came back to Tulane, finished and was going into graduate school, and that's when we met. And we had a very happy romance at school, except he told me that all his friends' girlfriends came out in nice, pretty little pleated skirts and nice little sweaters with little pearls. And I come out in mud splat and paint splattered jeans and a shirt. And he says, well, I'll have to get used to it.
So when did you realize that you were in school together in grammar school?
I never did. He told me later.
So,
We were recounting our childhood, and he told me I went to Wilson School, and I said, so did I. So that's how we.
and he was a couple of years ahead of you.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can come up later and see, this is one of the paintings that Doris did up here. And she has a beautiful one in her apartment. A whole, it was too big to bring, but it's, and I'm sure she won't mind if you tour once in a while up in her apartment. Yeah, yeah. And I know you have a son.
I do have a son.
This is Richard, and
I also have a daughter. And many of you may have met my daughter, because pretty soon I'll get to them, especially him.
Oh.
Because I graduated before he did. So then I got a position as in interior design at a local large department store. And then when he was finishing his graduate work, he sent out many resumes. And the one that was the most exciting was from a company that originated MRIs. And they said, in response to his application for employment, we have made one and it works well. We want someone to help us get this ready for assembly, because many medical offices want to use it. So he went to his dean and said, how do I know if I can make more? I only made one new piece of equipment for graduate school. And Dean Morrison, being a smart man, said, look, you made one, you can make some more, take the job. So, much to my surprise, we got married in January of 1951 and moved to Chicago in January. A girl who hadn't seen snow. And I got off the airplane and I said, oh, have I made a mistake?
How long did you stay there?
About 2 years. As an example of the climate, he was born in mid-February of the following year, and it had such terrible weather, the doctor never made it to the hospital. But Chicago was a wonderful place for a young couple. The museums, the music, the art, the plays, there was so much to offer, and we enjoyed it. And then he accepted a position with the government, with the National Bureau of Science as a scientist. And they moved us to Washington, D.C., which allowed him to visit the National Art Gallery and the Smithsonian and all those interesting places that were endless in Washington, D.C. What a wonderful time we had there, and an adventure. And then, in its wisdom, after 9 months, the government moved us all the way across the country to Southern California. And they had to pay for all of this movement, stupidly. But at any rate, we moved to a little town called Corona, near Ontario and Riverside, because 5 miles from there was an even smaller town called Narco, where there was a naval hospital that had been closed, and the government wanted to reopen it as a lab. So he was sent out to reconfigure the interior into offices and labs. And we really had such a wonderful time exploring Southern California, the beaches, the hiking, Yosemite, what was it, Scotts Berry Farm, and it was just wonderful. And we brought him along, and he had a little sister, and some of you may have met her. She is Debbie Davis, who has performed here twice. She has become a pianist, and she has performed here twice, and you all seem to enjoy it. So she's going to come back again on the 24th of this month. This time, instead of her friend Donna, who's a cellist who cannot make it, she's bringing another good friend who is a marvelous singer, a beautiful voice, and much experience in opera and light opera and musicals in the Bay Area. So I won't tell you more about that because she'll tell you, but it's going to be fun.
That's amazing. That is something to look forward to. Yes. What about the work that you've done?
Well, let's see. I stopped working with the 2 kids, and then the government moved us to Tucson. Sputnik had occurred, and the government realized that they had no defense against mortars and missiles. So they sent us to Tucson to help at Fort Huachuca to install defense against the missiles and mortars they were afraid might come from the Russian installations in Cuba. And they were afraid there might be also some in Mexico. So there we were moved to the desert with a little baby daughter and a little boy. And I had grown up in Louisiana, very lush. And I looked and I said, they call that a tree? Well, I didn't know anything about the desert, except that after a while, I really grew to love it. It was not empty. It was full of plants, just different plants that I had never known before. And when they bloomed, the desert was quite beautiful. And we bought a house there that was at the end of a cul-de-sac at the east end of town. And we could look out across the desert to the Catalina Mountains, which are the ones in that picture, that turned a beautiful rose every afternoon as the sun would set on them. So we were there for 4 years, and I think they all enjoyed it, especially Rick, who, of course, got into all sorts of mischief as a child would, except that Debbie was already what shall we call it? Adventurous. She painted a wall for me one day with my lipstick.
Is either
from
Richard or your daughter into artwork?
No, but she's in the performing arts, which she wished to be. So then the government wanted to send us back east, and we had gotten a taste of the West. So because of the urging of a dear friend, he urged that before you make a choice, would you come to San Jose or Palo Alto and let Lockheed interview you? This was another scientist that he knew that asked him to come. And he did go. And I was still back in Tucson. And they made him a nice offer. And then these friends of ours were very sneaky. They took him down to Big Basin. He saw this gorgeous trees, and he called me and said, "Oh, it's too beautiful. We have to come here." And that was the summer of 1959. And we've been here ever since.
You know, I'm going to interrupt for just a second because I'm concerned
About Sylvia.
About Sylvia. I'm supposed to be interviewing her.
Angela, what did you find out?
Oh,
What happened?
I saw her. I don't know whether she doesn't want to come. I got the feeling it wasn't something she really wanted to do.
Oh, I hope that
She's fine.
okay.
She's
That's what
okay.
I'm concerned about.
And with a little confusion, I think, maybe. But I don't know how to say it. She felt she didn't know if she had something to do. But I don't know whether she just didn't want to.
Okay.
Period. And she was, I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you for, I was concerned that something had happened.
could
Yeah.
happen.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So you're on.
Okay. So then we had to find a house here at a time when many of you remember it was nothing but fruit orchards. It was very difficult, but eventually we found a very nice home in Saratoga. And they told Rick, "Oh, they're going to build 280 immediately. Don't worry about getting to Palo Alto." 10 years later. But at any rate, that way I could get him registered to school and Debbie into kindergarten. So because so many of the employees were young engineer families, they all became friends and extended family. And so we made a lot of friends. And about 3 years after we moved in, one of my very good friends at that time, Sue Tucker, her husband was a scientist, told me, "I think we should buy some real estate because we don't have any write-offs for our husband's income." And they had just built a long row of fourplexes behind Westgate. So we went over, and for what you'd call today a pittance, We really, we bought a fourplex. We had no intention of taking money out, which was good because we didn't have any to take out. But it was somewhat of a help in deductions. And, you know, if we changed tenants, we did the cleaning. If it had to get painted, we put on a shower cap and did the painting. But we had a good time. We were young.
What about travel? Didn't you do quite a bit of travel?
After a little bit, I'll tell you, we did indeed. So what happened is his colleagues found out and they said to Rick, this is not fair. She has to do that for us too. So I said, well, I'll tell you, I'll do it, but you have to give me a lot of time to pick out something. So 5 families with whom we had become good friends, we formed a general partnership, and without my permission, elected me general partner to do all the work. So after a long search, I found a 34-unit townhouse development on Union, just off of Campbell, where it gets close to Bascom. And the luck I had there has followed me like a faithful dog. The next year, they built the prune yard across the street. So I never had a problem renting that place. Part of the arrangement operating statement was that every 5 to 7 years, we would either exchange that property for another or put funds in and buy one. And we have continued to do this as good friends for 54 years. And it is just this year and now that I am about to retire. Really, it's been a wonderful experience. One of our partners' family that's still with us, he will be 104 in September, and his wife is 97, and they're just both as bright as can be. It's been a wonderful time, and some of the children have remained involved with us, and it's just been a great experience. So that's what I've been doing in my spare time. The only other side thing I can say that's been extremely rewarding, and then I have to tell you about the kids and I'll shut up, is that learning from my parents in New Orleans to get involved with nonprofit and volunteer work, I did, beginning with the schools, with our congregation, since we both loved music, with the local musical groups like the symphony and auxiliaries for things like that. Although neither Rick nor I really are musicians, we love music. So that's been very rewarding too.
You still do painting?
I have given that up for the last few years, but I may go back to it.
When you're 104?
It's possible.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll just bring you up quickly to date with this one, of course, the senior. He was almost 2 before he would talk very much. Then we couldn't shut him up, of course. And we thought, well, he's a dear, dear boy, but he's a little bit slow. That's okay. So I remember one time he was in like the 3rd or 4th grade, and we were going to parents' night. And his teacher came over and said, you must be very proud of your son. And Rick said to him, how come? And he says, well, he's so smart. And he says, no, you're thinking of some other boy. He says, no, you just wait and watch. And sure enough, as he progressed in school, so did his scholastic abilities, and eventually ended up as valedictorian in high school, and then decided in the meantime, in high school, he became a runner in track and 2 mile, mostly long distance, right? and had some national titles for quite a long time. And he can maybe tell you about that better than I.
Do you have any grandchildren?
Yes. Oh, I have to tell you about Debbie first. So Debbie, I gave both of them music lessons, piano lessons. She liked it. He wanted to play the drum. So he ended up a drummer. But Debbie also loved to dance. And she had decided to become a ballet dancer professionally. And in high school, I used to pick her up after high school. And in the back seat of the car, she would change clothes into her little tutu. And I prayed nobody would ever stop me while she was half naked. Anyway, then Rick would pick her up on the way home. And then her ankle gave out one day at practice. And 3 orthopedic surgeons later all said, her ligature will not stand this amount of on-point work. If she continues, she's going to end up with crutches the rest of her life. So she said, no, I don't want that, but I want to stay in the performing arts. So I'll turn to piano. And that's how that happened. And she would practice 3-4 hours a day until by the time she graduated from high school, she was accepted at UOP's School of Music, which is very highly rated. And she stayed there until I think just finishing her junior year. And then she called me and said, you all know Debbie, I think. So you know this is true. Mom, do you mind if I go to San Francisco for music school the senior year? I'm thinking Stockton is not really for me. And they've accepted me and I have a room in the dormitory. Do you mind? Those of you who have daughters know what I mean. And then when she graduated from there, had gone on to Stanford for undergraduate work, decided to become a doctor, and gone down to Tulane for medical school, which I appreciated very much. He got to know all of our family there. We were going to go to his graduation, and Debbie said to me, Mom, I really would like to go to Peabody in Baltimore. Do you mind if we stop off on our way to New Orleans? It's very direct, just like this. Anyway, that's her story. And she has given me 2 beautiful children. And Rick finished his school, went on to USC for extra residency, was recruited by the Arcadia Clinic, has lived in that area, and supplied 2 wonderful boys for me for grandchildren. And you'll find those pictures over there. One is a naval officer, the one that we visited in November. He's now stationed in Pearl Harbor, and we had to cheer him up for having to stay in such a difficult place.
What about the other pictures?
Well, let's see. There's one picture of my granddaughter. My daughter has a beautiful daughter, my granddaughter, Ursula, and she has given me a darling great granddaughter, the only one I've been able to get those guys together to do. Huh? But I'm pretty close. Right. So my granddaughter's going to have a second one, but I can't seem to get the other 3 boys married off. So there, should I go over there? Because I don't know what it is from here. Or I can just go over there afterwards and tell you who they are. There's, my husband, me, my kids, my grandkids. That's about it.
I told her to tell us ahead of time so she wouldn't have to tell each person, but you'll probably recognize them. Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, what about you? I thought you did a lot of travel.
Oh, yeah. When the kids went off to college, we decided that he was gonna, well, he decided to retire. And Rinconada Hills in Los Gatos had just opened. So we sold the Saratoga house and bought a townhouse and did a lot of traveling. Enjoyed it tremendously, all over the place, cruising in overland, every place except not Nepal and not India, but China, excessive, Turkey, all kinds of, Australia, you know, Europe a lot, because we made some trips there previously. And then they kept coming back, the kids. Oh, yes. Yes, on a trip to Turkey, we took my sister. She's a fun lady. And I remember when we were in Istanbul at the, what do you call it? The Sophia, the Hagia Sophia. The tour guide was telling us that if you put your hand on this particular pillar, it will cure you of any illness. That's what Augustine did. The emperor, Roman emperor, when he did it. So my sister goes over there and she does it. And she says, I guess I didn't do it right. Anyway, she was always a fun person. Very, very fun person. So I talked a long time.
I'm wondering, I told Richard if he has any scandals he could tell us about, or she covered.
Oh, we did have a place on Molokai for 12 years. That was fun. We just loved the people there. Ha ha.
I didn't hear about this. What was this?
Oh, I like to play tennis, but I mean, I was just an average player.
Is that right?
That's right. No,
Okay.
I wasn't. I don't think I could ever do that in that kind of a sport because I don't have a strong enough competitive spirit. In fact,
Yeah, I noticed that you're quite shy.
yeah. I learned to play tennis at Rinconada Hills and continued. Oh, we then had to buy a house because our kids got married and started having kids and coming back. And my mother would come and visit for extensively to see her grandkids. So after 1973 to 94 at Rinconada Hills, we needed to redo our house, which was then 35 years old, needed new bathrooms and kitchens and stuff. And they wanted us to move out for 8 months. The contractor did. So we said, let's rethink this. This house is on 2.5 levels. This doesn't really make sense, does it? So we left there, sold it, and built a house at Silver Creek, which was just opened up on the south side of the valley, and stayed there for 26 years. And I can say one funny, right? The developer gave 3 lots to 3 different contractors that he liked because he had developed Blackhawk. And he told them that he'd give them the lot if they'd build spec houses and leave them open for a year as models. So they did, and we saw them. And then when we picked out the lot that we liked the best, it turned out one of the developers had an option. One of the contractors, the one we liked the best, had an option there on that lot. So he was happy to work with us. And he said, I've just finished a house adjacent to yours down the hill. I'd like to show it to you. So he did, and he introduced us to Judy and Charles Munnerlin. So they were our next door neighbors for 26 years. And then when I said, guess what? I'm going to move to the terraces. She said, guess what? So away. I think that's I'll sign
Do you
off.
know anyone else here? Did you before?
Oh, I knew a number of people who I had known many years previously. In fact, they said, we wondered when you'd show up.
I think you altered your place to accommodate your son, didn't you?
Well, all I did really was employ a wonderful group called the Valet Custom Cabinets to put in a Murphy bed and then shelves and cabinets and a desk.
You're a spoiled child.
But I will make one comment on this, because everyone with me relates to this. The moving out of her home of what, 35 years?
25.
Is the toughest job I've ever done in my life.
You-
You guys know about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Well, I think we did 40 or 50 carloads of material. Here, there, all the time. That was a challenge. We worked hard to get here.
Yeah, but she accommodated you by putting in a Murphy bed.
Well, more than that, since we wanted to spend the time with her.
She, yeah.
We're buddies.
Oh, you, what was that?
I have a second after this.
Oh.
It's good accommodations.
So we'll be, are you going to be ready to move in someday?
I'm ready for that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, listen, come on up and see the pictures. Oh, any questions first? No?
67 years. What?
When you said you were moving here, there was another couple that said they're moving.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the name.
Oh, Judy and Charles Munnerlin. They live in L 135. Yeah. They moved in about 3 months after I did. Okay.
Oh, there's no one else. I'm sorry about, I don't know.
What?
How many siblings?
I had one, Margaret's
Use your
sister,
microphone.
younger sister.
Use your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had one lovely, very feisty, dynamic younger sister. And I don't know, I thought I talked too much already. My mother had very difficult pregnancies. And in her second pregnancy, which is my younger sister, they didn't even know if it was going to go to fruition, but it did. And so the doctor said no more. And it turned out to be a little girl. And my father had hoped for a boy and a girl. So when his brother, my uncle, came over, he looked at her and said, well, I guess this is Jimmy. Well, her name was already Myra, but it's Jimmy that stuck. And she was Jimmy all her life. Unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago.
Is she the one that put her hand on the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like she had a sense of humor.
There's a little more to that story.
No, you tell it.
Okay, so they said that they can have any wish
They
they like.
can't hear you. Can you turn and use the mic?
So the story was that if you put your hand on the column, you can have any wish you'd like. So since Jimmy, as I said, could be very dynamic, she was watching when Rick, my father, put the hand on there. There was a moment of silence for the silent wish. And then he left, turned around, turned away. And she says, well, it must not have worked because I'm still here.
That's a great one, Rick. I forgot.
There you go.
If there aren't any more questions, come up and see the pictures and ask your questions up here. I'm sorry that Sylvia did not show up. I'm really concerned about that. I hope
We're gonna call called stage fright.
I hope I didn't say some smart aleck thing to her that she took seriously. I don't know. You don't think so? Okay. Yeah. Okay, you can go over and answer any other questions or. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Forgot about this.
There what?
I almost forgot about